Hello. All right. I'm a little bit husky, so excuse the most likely many sips of water I'm going to have to take. Hello, everyone. How are we doing? Good, good, good. Cool. So, what am I going to talk to you about? My name is Georgia, for those people that I don't know, and I've seen lots of new faces, and I head up solutions marketing for Adobe. What is solutions marketing? I effectively look after all of the Adobe digital experience products for the UK and the Middle East and Africa. And whilst I'm not supposed to have kind of favorites amongst the products, I most definitely do. And commerce is the one. It's my favorite child. So thank you so much for coming to a semi-confusingly named event, Meet Magento, sponsored by Adobe Commerce. We've not made it easy for anyone, have we? But we are really invested in the open source community. And I'm really, really happy to be here for one, because I actually remember going to my first Meet Magento, I reckon about a decade ago. And it was, and has always been, such an incredible event. And I feel really, really honored to be here. And, you know, also a touch of pressure to ensure that I deliver some value to you all this morning. But I'm seeing my role here as kind of the opener to really kind of set the tone, right? To get us in the mindset of what are we going to get out of today, get us out of the day-to-day headspace, thinking about the bar later, or from what I hear, the bar the night before for a lot of you, and into 2024 and beyond. So where are we at today? And is it even a commerce presentation if I don't kick off with some stats? But the good thing about going first is that it's everyone else that has to worry about if they're copying mine. So, some good news for everybody. Our May digital trends report is showing some positive trends. So, while the price of essential items is still incrementally rising month over month, 1.3% in May, just over 9% for the year, spending power and confidence is returning because only a 1.3% decrease in online spend in May. That's a very small decrease considering the scale of the problem. And that's showing some positive trends upwards. Other positive trends, 1.3 billion in buy now, pay later. I mean, you could say that's not a positive trend, but it definitely is for some people in the room. And it accounts now for 16% of total spending. It's a huge amount. Another company that's had a fantastic year, TikTok, 164% year-on-year growth. I think a lot of us have kind of been a little, dismissive of potentially TikTok as a commerce channel, but the growth is insane over the last year. And I can't believe I'm still harping on about mobile, but here I am, mobile grew again, and it now accounts for just over 60% of sales. However, there's some downside, and I'm sure we're all facing it, right? So, oh, and there we go. My clicker's not working. There we go. All right. So there are economic and geopolitical challenges that we're all facing, right? And they've spilt, sorry guys, I'm gonna have to ask the guys. My slides on here are not my slides down here. Is there a letter? Right, hold on. I'm gonna have to free. No, still delayed. I'm just going to talk to you while these guys figure out. There we go. Right. So we've all been facing geopolitical. Oh, you're doing stuff again? This is the ultimate test. All right. So the economic and geopolitical challenges that began last year have spilled over to this year. You've got spreading global inflation, you've got less buying power, you've got margins under pressure, and you've got tighter monetary policies from central banks, increased cost of capital. I mean, the blows just keep coming, don't they? So to claim that the world needs retail to prevail against all these headwinds is really not hyperbole, not least because retail is one of the largest private sector employees globally, right? And providing entire nations access to goods and individuals with their first job, like I think sometimes the impact we underestimate that we can have on a global level. So for retailers to continue their trajectory, you've got to recognize the multitude of high-level forces at play and the tensions between them. So what now, right? Well, obviously, stats show that it's not been easy. but that you're a very, very resilient bunch, and you should be proud of that. And so when I was thinking about what to talk to you about today, I was thinking, how do I convincingly get up here and talk to you all about the future of commerce, right? I mean, a lot of you are probably more technical than I am, or at least I really hope you are, for your sake. And a lot of you probably have some quite strong views around what those trends are going to be. And I was thinking about the bigger picture. What unites all of us in this room? What are the factors that we're all going to have to be thinking about as we move into the coming years? And how do we grow or sustain market share despite all those economic factors? And so then I was thinking about what's been the best conversation I've had recently. And actually, it was part of a roundtable with KPMG, so credit to them if there's anyone here, and a framework that they've coined. I mean, look, it's a similar framework we've seen before, but they've got a catchy name for it, about attention and a mapping of tensions between a new 3 Ps. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So, people, planet, and profit. As you move into 2024 and beyond, it is going to be the very careful balancing act of these 3 elements that dictate success. And you need a plan. Everybody in this room needs a plan on how they're going to address these major themes and the 9 subtopics that I'm going to show you in a minute. How you understand the interdependencies without creating detrimental impact on the others. It's an art, it's a strategy, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about. So, this model encompasses 9 themes that include protecting margins, growing under harsh economic conditions, the rising importance of people from consumers to employees, and the very new reality that we just can't set aside, that sustainability cannot be pushed to one side when market conditions take a turn for the worse. And I know maybe some of you are thinking that this doesn't apply to you in here, maybe your vendor side or your agency side, you're not a retailer, but your role is to know this. What is your role within this framework? How can you either support, encourage, sell to, provide product to against these strategies? Because the clearer you have an understanding of this, the more of value you're going to be to the customers in the room. So, let's talk about people. Retail companies employ millions of people and impact millions of lives in different ways. And ideally, they leverage diverse talents and workforces while ensuring equity and inclusion across the workforce, whilst, of course, maintaining and delivering on their responsibilities to consumers. So it includes employees, the attraction and retention of, you can't forget that, consumers, the rapidly shifting demands, and don't forget your other stakeholders, right? Your shareholders, policymakers, influencers, and the management of the relationships with them. Planet and corporate health, whether you kind of think about it daily or not, are entirely intertwined, right? Climate-driven events have the potential to impact everything. So from fixed assets and employee safety to the ability to actually operate all together, depending on where we end up. And retailers have an integral responsibility in that, right? In terms of encouraging biodiversity, environment, not only both for customers, but also for impending regulations, right? So this will be demanded of you in some way soon, whether that's increased ESG reporting, whether that's transparency on vendors and partners, governance. Then profit, probably what you're all in the room for today. Margin protection, right? How do you reliably protect your margin? So that's efficiencies, that's operational effectiveness and loss prevention, technology, the pass-through of I can never say that word, inflationary cost, inventory, supply chain, you name it, right? Then you've got growth. How are you consistently creating growth? Portfolio optimization, price optimization, promotional elasticity, revenue, and new business models and innovation. Now, I was going to try and avoid using the term AI in this entire future of commerce presentation, but this includes AI. So, AI, social commerce, metaverse, augmented reality, and whilst I'm not going to talk to you in depth about those themes today, in fact, if you want to talk about AI, you should go and listen to Aidan's track in the technical track later. That'll be fantastic. But we live in a dynamic ever-changing world? And what are your plans, not only to kind of adapt to that, but to use those innovations to create progress and drive market share? So it's striking a balance between those that is going to, in many ways, dictate your success over the long term, right? Because that's your strategy, that's your North Star. And it'll look different for everyone, right? This is just a kind of illustration to show that you're going to push or pull this model in certain ways. But building this and having a long-term strategy, a representation, if you like, of kind of your business values, should give you a clear view on the decisions you need to make. So I'm going to touch on a couple in a bit more detail. Profit and planet. So as we've discussed, you're a huge force, right? This big retail industry, and you can affect meaningful progress. And consumers are asking it of you. I mean, but how do you do that when retail profitability over the last 10 years is in some instances declined by 50%, right? And the transition to more sustainable practice is costly, unless it's been built into your model from the very beginning, right? It's embedded in your whole value creation. And can you pass that on to the consumer? So let's look at margin and sustainability, right? There is a limit to how much a consumer is willing to pay for a retailer's sustainable practices, even when it's them asking it of you, right? It's a fantastic dichotomy. They want you to do it, and you better do it. Oh, but now it's too expensive, and I don't want it. So, and it's a real mixed bag. You've got one survey says 30% of people will pay more for your sustainable products. And then another survey says 30% of people will not pay more for sustainable products because they don't have enough money. So it is a challenge that we need to face. But you can't ignore the growing trends, right? The global second-hand market is growing 3 times faster than the apparel market. It's going to have grown 127% in the next 3 years. And over half of Gen Z and millennials shop for second-hand items before new goods. And basically half of everyone is considering the resale value before buying something. This is a trend that is moving and that we need to be paying attention to. Now, there are some obvious examples of where companies have done this really, really well, right? And it's embedded in their entire value creation model. So we all know about Patagonia. I'm not going to go into that. They've done it from the heart, right? But there's actually a bunch of examples of where brands have been really smart about it, right? They've either found additional revenue streams by creating which I'll talk to you in a minute, or they've managed to stay front of mind by consumers, met their demands without really creating that much additional cost or pressure on the business. So Nudie are a prime example, actually, if anybody knows them. They make jeans from recycled jeans. And they offer you a discount when you bring your old jeans in. It's a lovely cyclical event. People buy into it. You take your jeans back. You get a discount. It's good for you. Meanwhile, they're encouraging loyalty whilst meeting their kind of environmental goals. H&M owned COS are a fantastic one where they realized that their goods were being sold secondhand on other platforms, right? So marketplace, Vinted, whatever. So they created their own marketplace. So they have a COS marketplace for secondhand COS goods, and they take a cut. So what an easy way, right? They've taken back an additional slice of revenue whilst meeting sustainability. And then Nike and Sainsbury's are really good examples of brands that have gone, okay, actually, how can we demonstrate that we don't encourage wastage? How can we stay front of mind that we're meeting those demands? So Sainsbury's really focused on kind of food wastage, setting up pop-up tents and content and videos on how to keep your food fresher for longer, amongst the additional kind of removing of packaging, etc. Nike did kind of stay white for longer, and they set up stations where they'll clean your trainers for you or give you advice on how to keep them fresh. All of those things are just really little examples of how they're moving towards their greater goals, kind of one step at a time. And look, it's a tightrope, right? I think all of these interdependencies and kind of tensions are, how do you strike a balance between the two? How are you still maintaining your profit? How are you still growing whilst meeting those kind of more ecological demands? People and profit. So I only have time to talk to you about a couple today, and I figured at the end of the day, this is probably the most relevant for everyone in the room. When consumer demand softens and retail companies have a growing menu of tools available to them to preserve margin. But most of them are short term, if you think about it, right? So more often than not, when you're under pressure, the longer term projects, especially those that are going to deliver kind of structural or technology changes, improvements, get shelved, even though we know they're the ones that are going to deliver scale, even though we know that they might be the ones that are going to deliver the effects. And when we think about customers and growth and that real natural tension of how do we give the customers exactly what they want, the experiences they want, whilst ourselves growing, ooh, tap my own mic, that's where I think there's an absolute natural harmony. At Adobe, we call this experience-led growth, and it's something you hear kind of Adobe harping on about a lot, because it's been proven time and time again that if you create experiences, you deliver growth, right? The number one creator of growth in online businesses is experience, right? And we know the business outcomes, right? You have improved relevance to the customer, you have brand engagement, you create trust and loyalty, which obviously then from a business means you can scale, you can reduce costs, you get improved customer satisfaction. But in many ways, I think we're still quite a long way away from the things that you need to deliver it, because to really deliver personalization, and I think there are more talks about personalization today, but I think a lot of us kind of think we're there, and the reality is we're really not there. Like, I think in many ways, a lot of the tools available to us have further complicated things, or we've got distracted. Do you have a data platform in place? Do you have the ability to create and produce content in the moment at a personalized level, on a one-to-one level, right? Not a cohort level, proactively? Can you scale? Or are you so siloed that that's kind of physically impossible? So I just thought I'd kind of touch on a really kind of quick example, because I know we all spend our lives thinking about it, and I think it's a fairly basic thing for me to mention, but I don't think we are there in personalization. I don't think we are there in delivering great customer experiences most of the time, even though the technology has never been better, even though we're in a golden age of data. Just the other day, I'm just going to, quick story, I was looking for an outfit for today, because any excuse. And I thought I'd go really on brand. I'm going to get a red dress. It's going to be great. And I've been wandering around the streets, and I saw a really, really nice one in a window. And I'm not going to name the brand in case they're here, because I'm about to kind of say some bad things about you, so I'm sorry. So I saw this red dress, and I thought, oh, maybe not. And then on the train home, I decided, actually, yeah, I'm going to get that dress. So I went online. And I thought, I'm just going to use Google search, which I think what we all do now. And I said, red dress, red unnamed brand. I nearly said it. Red dress, unnamed brand. Nothing came up. And I thought, well, that's weird. Maybe I need to go to the website. So I went to the website and I searched red dress. One dress came up and it was not the dress. So then I went all dresses and I filtered red. It only gave me red, just to be clear. There was no other color. Red. No, still one dress. Now I was on the train. It's actually on the Thames link, and if any of you came in by it, you'll know that I was severely delayed. I had time to kill. So I searched through page after page of every dress, and eventually there I found it. Page 4, there it was. Tangerine dress. It was a tangerine dress. Silly me. And worst of all, it didn't even have my size. I've wasted about 45 minutes at this point. And then underneath it were all these other dresses suggested to me. Coral dress. There were some other terms for red I think I hadn't even thought about. Crimson, a crimson dress. Anyway, it just got me thinking that in so many ways, this is a major brand, by the way. This is a brand all of you will know. And how many of you probably have countless examples? I'm sure you do. You kind of come up against it day to day. But yet we kind of get into rooms like this and we think, yeah, don't yammer on about personalization. We know how to do that. Don't talk to me about search. But we're not doing it. And I think a lot about how many times retailers miss out on sales, how many times you'll miss out on delivering customer experiences and being able to kind of leverage opportunities to create growth, right? So how many times have you seen kind of a brand, for example, when the Michael Jordan documentary aired and there was a massive surge in people wanting to buy Jordans, if you weren't set up with your MarTech and your commerce stack, right, to be able to kind of take advantage of that, did you have personalized landing pages? Did you know people that might have watched the documentary? Did you know they were coming? Were you able to reposition your stock? Did you know how much you could sell? Like how were you able to react in that moment? Or maybe a homewares or DIY business unable to react to a very sudden weather event. What are you doing to be able to capitalize on that? Because somebody is. And all of these instances, all of these examples, they're not happening because people aren't good at their jobs, not happening because people don't care. Dramatic pause. They're happening because of one thing nearly always, and that is that they didn't have a long-term strategy, right? That they had a bad balance between the short term and the long term. And that is a problem for society at large that I don't think we talk about a lot, actually. It's a problem in politics, it's a problem in economics, and it's a problem in businesses. We only ever look forward at short periods of time, and it doesn't set us up to be able to actually really react in the moment. In fact, quarterly capitalism, as it is known, is a really perfect example of that, right? It's actually blamed by the likes of Larry Fink, who's the CEO of BlackRock, for the decline. The decline in long-term thinking is actually blamed for damaging the future of America, the future of American economy, because the whole world thinks short-term. They think about politics. Think about politics. You're thinking about winning the election. You're not thinking about what to do after the election. That's by the by. I've just got to get to it. And actually, think of climate change. I mean, climate change is the perfect example. It's ultimate short-termism. So we actually all live in this short-term society. And think about it. The average time in a role in London is 2 years. 2 years. So, and what's your bonus set at? 1 year? What's your reporting set at? Quarterly? Mine's bi-weekly. I mean, we're not in the business of caring about the long term. And it has a very detrimental effect on our strategies, on our businesses, and therefore our growth. I mean, think of tech stacks, right? Think of the band-aiding and the short-termism that came into place as the SaaS industry exploded. In 2011, there were 150 MarTech solutions. There are now 11,038. And for the quick mathematicians in the room, that's a 7,258% rise. So even though they're compatible with one another, and yes, we can take things together, like that's another example of the sticky situation that we've got ourselves in with short-termism. And this isn't, by the way, just a B2C issue. If there are any B2B people in the room, B2B business in the room, it's just the same, right? Businesses that think long-term are more successful. So if you can see, basically, if you allocate more than 60% of your budget to long-term initiatives, you are twice more likely to be successful than the others. So it's not just a B2C thing. It is a B2B thing as well, because I think sometimes we kind of go, oh, it's consumer. No, it's the same. Long-term thinking has been proven time and time again, but yet somehow we all ignore it. And I get it, kind of. It's scary. Like, commitment's scary. That bloke's nodding. So, but I am a quick story and kind of like the success of like long-term strategies. I used to look after BMW in Australia after their brand strategy and also their retail strategy. And they start marketing to people at 6. That is their strategy. Their strategy is that, and this doesn't say anything about BMW drivers, I'm going to leave that for another conversation, but you decide your dream car at a very young age. So then when you're financially able to buy that car, you've set a milestone in your mind. And you're going to go whether your dad had that car, whether you saw it in a cool movie, or someone you really admired had it. You have that from a very early age. Yes, the sales point or the kind of advertising you may see at a later point might be the trigger, right? But it's kind of usually not. It's kind of usually you've got a bonus or you've got yourself to a point that you can finally get that product. And that is a very long-term strategy. And they have a very clear goal on the future as well, right? So if you think, for example, Mercedes want you to feel like you're not driving. Their future goal is that you get into a car and you feel like you're on a luxury plane, that you don't have to do anything, and it's going to be ultimate comfort. BMW don't want to do that. They want to be the car for drivers. They don't want for technology to take over. They have a very clear position on where they want to get to, and they make all of their decisions on what technology they put in their car or don't put in their car against, we're going to be this, right? And those are the brands that are really kind of getting it switched on. So the designer put this slide in, and I let it, because it's fun. So Back to the Future. What does this mean for everyone here? And to wrap it up, I kind of think about Kodak v. Disney, right? They're two clear examples. Kodak, short-term strategy, wallowing in their number one spot, didn't know how they were going to adapt to the changing environment, didn't know how they were going to manage tensions. Didn't go so well for Kodak. Disney were in a terrible spot, for those that don't know. Disney were going to probably go bust in the late 90s. They had a new CEO join called Robert Iger, and I mean, he said a lot of things that you put on kind of a magnet or a fridge, you know, like, don't give up on the toughest of aspirations and innovate or die. But he had a very, very clear goal, which was to be relentless. And it actually made me think, I recently chatted to the very lovely customer director of B&Q on a podcast that I co-host, and he said something just really simple, really interesting, which is that regardless of whether they're number one, they always act like they're number two. And it's having a number two mindset that allows them to always be growing and always be kind of staying alert for the competition and for the brilliant e-commerce businesses that are popping up. So back to this. We live in a very dynamic and progressive environment, right? If the pandemic has taught us anything, it's that we have to be able to adapt in the short term and be progressive in the long term, right? You have to foresee trends and advancements and lead the way. You've got to act like number two. You cannot stand still, but you can't be frenzied activity either, a kind of aimless activity. So what I'd love for you all to take away from this talk today is that it's about tension and balance. And you would honestly be amazed at the clarity and the direction that you would have if you completed this exercise. If you take all 9, if you find the interdependencies, if you figure out where you want to stand, where you're going to kind of make your moves, because that's going to allow you to make short-term decisions, right? With that framework in hand, you can better determine strategies, activities, technologies, talent, and sustain profitability for long-term success. I'll just leave you on this, which is if you're kind of interested in this idea of kind of long-term and short-term, this is a book that I highly recommend that talks a lot about it. And if you want to hear more from B&Q, listen to the Retail Craft podcast. Also, a couple of the speakers today, Janice from Look Fabulous Forever, she's also on it as well. So it's been lovely talking to you. I hope that was interesting, and I'll see you around.